What is good, God's Vibes? We have a special guest with us on the podcast today. Welcome, Rosie, to the God's Vibes podcast.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here with you.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you're here. Tell the
Yay.
folks who you are. Who is Rosie?
Oh gosh, who is Rosie? That's a question I used to ask myself all the time as a kid. I would stare in the mirror and be like, who is Rosie? Like, who am I? Anyway,
I
but who
love
am I
that.
that I know of? I am a daughter of God, number one. And the rest is I am a wife to my husband. We've been married for 10 years, dated for 12, I guess. I started 2 years for that, friends for 2 years before that. So he is a good man in my life. I have two beautiful children. My daughter is 10 and my son is 7. Um, I'm a daughter and a daughter-in-law, all those wonderful things. I love health and wellness and fitness. I love cooking. I really love you know I grew up in the 90s, right? I was an 81 baby, grew up like when I was in junior high. I grew up
Uh-huh.
in Texas. We had Future Homemakers of America, and I was in it. And I
Oh my
went to a
God.
convention in Austin, Texas,
Stop.
for Future Homemakers of America. So, and I'll be honest, I love, I kind of work from home, and I love being able to be home and kind of create a nice, cozy home for my family.
That's
That's kind of me.
amazing. It's so
That's me.
necessary too, because we honestly, like right now, we don't see a lot of people that genuinely enjoy that. Like you see like the, go-getter mom that's like never home.
Yeah.
So it's like to actually enjoy homemaking and like all that
Yeah.
that encompasses is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I really have I've kind of fought it in different stages of life, and I'm really embracing it now and enjoying being able to kind of do that. And I know it's a blessing because I know not everyone is called to that, and able to do that, and maybe they want to, and that's something they're working towards. But I'm really grateful for it.
Yeah. I think it's interesting too. I was sharing with another gal the other day, and it's almost like the things that you resist or that you fight are the very things that you're going to be great at. I don't know if
Yeah,
it's like a joke. Like we were specifically talking about she never wanted to have kids, right? She didn't want to be married.
yeah,
She didn't want to have kids. And like she's very much married with kids right now. And she's going to serve youth. So I'm like, how funny is God, right? Like that was not even
yeah,
what you were set up to do at all. And like here you are. So it's just really interesting. I think that that's probably a key for some people listening that if you're resisting this area, that's probably really where God wants to show
yeah.
up in a big way.
Yeah, and where I am today is I mean, are answers to prayers I prayed as a little girl. So, I don't think this is by mistake at all.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Amazing.
yeah.
Amazing. So tell us too a little bit about your God journey. You are,
Oh
right,
my
a daughter of
goodness.
God, but that journey has probably evolved quite a bit. So tell
Yes.
folks what that's looked like for you.
It's a loaded journey for sure.
Loaded.
I didn't well, gosh, I didn't grow up in a home void of God. My mom spoke to me about God and Jesus and who he was, but we didn't like there was no church. I grew up I was born in Texas. We moved to Arizona for a bit, moved back to Texas when I was about 7, and we moved in with my grandparents. It was me and my brother and my mom, and my grandparents went to church every Sunday, and sometimes I would go, and but God wasn't really. I was always very curious about church and very curious about God. I was always also very intimidated if I ever went with my family. It was always it was a world I was very unfamiliar with, but at the same time, it was a world I very much wanted to be a part of.
Mm.
And my mom, I'm not sure, like, we've never really had a discussion in depth about her history with church, but I know it's not like positive all and I feel like that really influenced like how she approached,
Mm.
kind of that with us. I mean, definitely knew about God, but we didn't really pursue him, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um and I always had lots of questions, and I wondered why, because I also my upbringing was I grew up in a single parent home. I never knew my biological father, not until I was like 24 I met him. so again, lots of questions. And where I grew up when we moved to my grandparents, my family looked a lot different than those around me. And as a kid, I wanted to look like them because
Yeah.
like I felt I struggled with this. I like stand out because I'm different, but also nobody sees me because I'm different. There was always this tug and pull. When I was around God, there
Mm.
was something about being around people. We kind of dabbled in churches here and there as a young kid. And it wasn't until junior high that my best friend, who I met at basketball camp the summer before seventh grade,
Yeah.
her dad is a preacher, and I started going to church with him, and her and I were best buddies, BFFs forever. And she stood up in my wedding right next to me. So I started getting into God more through them. And whenever I was around people that like were in relationship with God, it's like I sense this peace and this, I want whatever it is that they have, because they seem like, and I know appearances are appearances, but it always felt to me like even in the hardest of times, they had a way to have peace. And I felt like my life was really hard and I never had peace.
Yeah.
So I just wanted that and wanted, so I got baptized as a teenager, but fast forward to now, I'm not sure I really knew what that meant or what that was supposed to be at the time, but I do remember that day feeling like this, just like this aura around me, like it was the most magnificent. I can still remember it today, like how I felt the entire day after I was baptized.
Yeah.
So then again, kind of my friend and I kind of drifted in and out of relationship in high school as we explored our different paths. And I kind of would not go to church, whatever. And God was kind of always there. It's this is such a long story. I'm trying to keep it as short as I can, but it's an important. But the journey is so important. So then I went to college, and as someone I know once said, I kind of put God on a shelf. And I thought, I'm gonna keep you right here, but I'm gonna like go and do my thing, right? Like I still like have you. I'm gonna go.
Yeah.
So, but I always felt like I still always sought that feeling of God. Whenever I was around people who I felt like were super connected to God, I really like I noticed and I could feel it. And then when I graduated, it started my career and all that kind of stuff. I dabbled with going to churches kind of here and there and seeing if I liked one or the other. And then my husband's Jewish, and when we were dating, we would go explore synagogues and churches and just kind of. I was trying to find my way because I always felt like I was supposed to be close to God. Like God felt like something that was really good, and my life had a lot of hardships, a lot of things. I like talked about what I prayed when I was a little girl um, for this life I have now. I prayed a big, heavy prayers as a little girl, I think, and comparing them to my daughters, that she wishes that it wouldn't, or she prays that it doesn't rain. So I feel like, which is makes my heart so happy.
Yeah.
So I then we got after when we got married, we actually met with a pastor and kind of counseled with a pastor leading up to our marriage, who was like a friend of mine, and that was really good. And so like God was kind of a part of our marriage, stepping into it. And then after, and again, still kind of dabbled a little bit, going to church here and there, always kind of wanting something, but not knowing really where to start because I didn't grow up knowing any of that stuff. I didn't really know any Bible stories. I didn't know scripture. I didn't know, it's hard for me to even find books in the Bible. I had to look at the index all the time, right? Like all this stuff was new. And so it was really intimidating. Then we moved to Michigan. So I was in Arizona at the time. So Texas graduated, went to Arizona. I met my husband. We came to Michigan. So I'm like a Southwest girl living in a Midwestern world kind of thing going on here. And when we moved here, the fall after we moved here, friends of mine invited me to this women's conference, and it was like reignite your fire or something was the theme of it. And I felt so like, I say enraged in a good way, like just enraged with God and like wanting to explore whatever it was he was like
Yeah.
looking for me to get. And at the time, I left that conference feeling this really big push to get into a career, to get a job, to go into the workforce and to do something. At the time we had moved here, my daughter was 2 and I was pregnant.
Okay.
And I thought, okay, so I'm going to get this, start working more. And I got this job, which was totally God. When we first moved here, I got this job at this club, and totally God. I mean, again, it was one of these, I didn't think I was qualified, right? And
Uh-huh.
he, like, it appeared and it was so, and it all happened so fast,
I love it.
and it was crazy. And so I stepped into this position, and this was my dream job, right? Everything I had ever wanted in life. Perfect. I mean, just everything about it was everything I had dreamed, right?
Okay.
But it really wasn't. There was a lot of stuff within that position that where the enemy really seeped in big ways. But I kept going to those women conferences, and God was kind of always still there. And I did a right before COVID started. So in the fall before COVID, I started a Bible study with my church. So I said, when we moved here into the house we're in now, actually, I found a church nearby and started going because a friend of mine went there, and we eventually became members. And that's the first time I've ever been a member of the church. And I've been a member there for about 5 years.
Okay.
And this fall, I wanted to get a little bit more involved. At the time, I was working like 60 hours a week. So getting involved in stuff was really difficult. But like they opened up a Bible study, a fitness Bible study. And God, I feel like has always met me. I've been thinking about this a lot, has always met me in fitness. I used to be a big endurance athlete. I'm a retired runner now after broken ankles and surgeries. We just don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And but in that space was where I kind of always met him. I didn't have church sometimes in my life, but on runs, he was always there. So he was kind of like, that's kind of always where he met me. And I feel like in my own business, I'm trying to integrate fitness, food, and faith, because God met me in my wheelhouse. And I think he can meet all of us in our wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Like, what's your wheel? Is it finance? I bet God will meet you there if you let him. Is it, if he, because he knows that's where we're like comfortable starting to take those steps out of our comfort zone, I guess, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
So I started a Bible study there, and I really like was able to start soaking in scripture and understanding the importance of health, like from a biblical perspective. And while I was at this place that kind of started, and God was talking like, maybe this isn't, but like this other side is like, this place is really great, but maybe there's something else, but no, there's not. And then COVID
Wow.
happened. And so this is something that drew me to you. And we've used some of the exact same words to describe it. When COVID happened, and I know everybody has their COVID story. I told my counselor later, like, I felt like I was dying, like literally felt like I was dying. I felt like I was dust. Like I felt like I had been turned to absolute dust and rubble. I had been training for this 5K leading up to it. I had always wanted to run a 5K in under 20 minutes, and I had a goal to do it before I turned 40. I was 39. And the Monday before the race, which was a week before everything shut down, I fell on a run and broke my ankle, tore everything up. I had to have surgery. Run didn't happen. So that was before everything shut down. Then everything shut down. And my job was very people person oriented. I love being on the floor with the people. I was with the people. That was like my thing, right? Taken away. My family's all home, going on walks to save their mental health, because let's all be honest, like, right? I can't go on walks. Why? Oh, because my ankle is literally hanging on by a thread.
Yeah.
And it's like, my world just fell apart. It absolutely fell apart. I didn't know. I would walk around my house just like, it was like my house was moving, and like inside was like just moving in this slow motion. So I started getting up every day at 4 a.m. because the time my kids were kindergarten and 3, and they wake up at 6:30 now. I mean, you can only imagine what time they were waking up then, right? So any time to myself to like be quiet and
Yeah.
think was before they were up. So I get up at 4 and I was diving into this devotional I had, and I was just seeking refuge in God. Like, God, please, like, I have nothing else. And I have done that a few times in my life. Like, I'm on the edge, please rescue me. But
Uh,
this time it felt like if you don't do it now, I don't know what's going to be left. And I felt like he saved me, and it was, and through that process, like since then, the relationship I've grown with him has been, and the faith I have in him and the hope I have in him and the trust and the belief and the strength and everything I have is from him. And it like, and our relationship has just kind of been an exponential growth, and life is good. It's all that stuff I saw and wanted as a kid had, I see it happening in my life, and all that stuff I felt God could be for me through other people. I see it, like I feel it. And it's just been, it's been really hard. There's been and I know that life is not always going to be easy, that
yeah.
it's not always going to be like, oh, it's just, I've got, and, but if I can recover from some of the things in my past that have affected me in such profound ways negatively,
Yeah.
and so many things that have kept me from getting to this point where my prayer is like that, perhaps I will be the seed that plants the legacy of faith in my family. There's this quote that went around on Instagram, and it was on a TV show. I think it was something like, the uh, society or grows great when old men plant trees, the shades of which they'll never sit in. And I feel like that has to be what I remember all the time, is like the work I do today, uh, it can be for generations down the road. And that's amazing that I could be given that opportunity. So,
100%. I
because
love
there
what
were
you're
times
saying.
in my, yeah, sorry,
I
go
feel
ahead.
like I sense this is speaking to somebody when you feel like, you're excited, you're catching like a wave, a wind of something new, and then all of a sudden, like everything falls apart, right? And it doesn't make sense. Like all these things that were your joy or that you really counted on to fuel you or feed your soul in some way, and then all of a sudden they're not there anymore, and it could be like, what is actually happening? Like I thought I was tracking, I thought I was on the right path, like what is going on? This is such a common experience, strangely enough. People just don't talk about it because it's a very isolating season. It can feel that way. It's a very consecrated season if you choose that to be the case,
Hmm.
right? And thank God for that in some ways, because a lot of times people have to go through this publicly, and that's even more painful because now you're exposed,
Yeah.
you even know what the heck is happening. So when God takes us through this private pain, what I've observed is that he is working on our dependency. That's what this is. And even that is his mercy, because we would go, full speed into something that maybe he's not even a part of. And he's like, okay, when you're finally down to nothing, you've got room for me.
Yeah.
Right. But that feels
Yeah.
awful to get to.
Yeah. I mean,
Feels
it,
awful to get to.
I was clearly holding on to the wrong things, making my own desires the main thing. But when I feel like we have God, if when you hold tight to him and things are stripped away, I mean, you have him, and that's okay. And doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean there's not a process of grief and loss and all that going on at the same time. But it's so much more stable there. And my life was so unstable for so far too long.
Yeah.
And but I through our class and a lot of the stuff we have done, I have been able to see God's perspective in all of it and what he was doing, like moving us back to Texas. I mean, it wasn't just my story he's crafting, he's all, there's other people that are part of it. For me, it was getting me, I think, near my grandparents and my grandmother, especially, who was just a solid woman in my life. God rest her soul. She, you know, that's where I really started to see God and people relating to him and making him a priority. And
Yeah.
so I can see more of his story in my life now versus the world's story,
Yes.
and feeling why me, poor me,
Totally.
kind of a thought, you know.
Yeah. Well, and the beautiful thing that you did, right? Like when you were in this place of just utter destruction, and a lot of times we're so confused and we don't get it. And it's even hard to see God in that place, yet we still do it. That's confirmation that God's process is working, because you once didn't seek him. You saw all the other things. And now, even when it doesn't make sense, you're seeking him. So that's proof that he's working.
Yeah.
That desire was not in you before, and that seek was not in you before. So tell the folks how you got from that season to where you are today and what you're up to today. Tell them how that happened, because that jump was probably a huge one, a significant one for sure.
It's been a lot of therapies. I mean, to be honest, in all kinds of ways. I mean, let
Yeah.
me tell you, a lot of putting it out there and not like holding anything in. So one of the first things, I mean, I left my job in September of 2020. And that summer, God, I was sitting outside, right? I devoted time to God every morning. And that summer, I would sit on the back porch, and I was, this was probably July, maybe
Right.
August-ish, because my 2 weeks was up, like Labor Day weekend. And I was sitting in the back porch, and I heard God's voice. And I don't know that I've ever heard God's voice before or after, or since, I should say, but I heard God. I'm like looking up at the trees too, because I'm like, what? Like, what's happening right now?
Like, what's happening?
He said, you're going to leave your job and teach health and wellness from home through faith.
Mm,
That's what he said. And I got up, and at the time I had ankle surgery. So I'm like on one of those scooter things. And
yeah.
so I scootered my way. This was not easy, because like, scootered my way into the kitchen. My husband's in there cleaning up something. And he's a teacher. And I say to him, like, I'm going to quit my job and teach health and wellness through faith from home. And like, it was like slow motion. He just like turns his head over his
Happened.
shoulder and like looks at me. He's like, what? Like, I'm like, yeah, God said it, and I'm going to do it. And he's like, and then my husband, bless his heart,
Yeah.
I'm not, I have although this is something else I've been working on as well. I tend to be like, I decide and I do, I decide and I do. It hasn't always worked out in my favor, but this time, and with God, most of the time when God, like when I feel him nudging me, a lot of times I'm like, but wait, let's like talk about it. I've got ideas too.
Yeah.
He's like, he's not interested in those. He's like, no. But this time when he said it, I was like, I'm doing it, which was crazy, because again, this was my dream job. I mean, it was amazing. The opportunities that I had, the opportunities I was able to give it was everything I ever had wanted. So leaving was really truly bittersweet, but I felt like, I have to do this. So September of 2020, that happens. Well, my daughter is like in school online half the day full. It was just like the craziest of times. But in the midst of that, I kind of launch a little business, and I'm trying to continue like my relationship with God, like not letting that go. And I started into some therapy, because I needed like some therapy for sure. And from there, it's been like this snowball of coaching, therapy, coaching, therapy, and God placing these people in my life for the next thing and for the next thing. And it's so funny. It always kind of, so many times it comes back to health and wellness and fitness, because I think he knows, and science and stuff like that. I have a very, it's kind of, I call myself a body engineer. I'm very engineer minded and I love like the body. Right. So, but it always comes back to that because I feel like that's where he can really get my attention and like pull me in the next direction. So therapies. And then I got, coaching, or I did a podcast interview about my fitness, food, and faith, business, if you will, and
Yeah.
how that works, which led me to a fitness professional coaching.
Uh-huh.
In the midst of all this, I found a new therapist. I kind of graduated to the next one, and from my fitness professional coaching, I took on a personal trainer, which was always something I had wanted to do, but feared doing because I am one. And it's like, well, how come you can't do it for yourself? Well, coaches need coaches. I mean, let's be honest. I was giving everything I had to everyone else and leaving myself with really not much in the tank I'd go to my gym and do a little bit of this or that, but it never felt like
Yep.
what I needed.
Yep.
So that led to her. I ended up going on like a retreat, and then you came along like through all of this too. Like I searched for health, fitness, faith podcasts, and
Yeah.
one of your podcasts showed up, and I listened to several of your podcasts. I applied to do God's Vibes once and then backed out because I just didn't feel ready. One thing I also try to do is to keep my plate very manageable,
Yeah.
if not a little roomy, because
Yeah.
I just don't like, I just, I operate better that way. I give a better version of me when I am mindful of that.
Love it.
And so, and then, so then I decided, okay, I'm just going to go for it on the next round because it's important. And in every single one of, oh, and then, gosh, was this or around the same time that I started with you, you had, Vanessa, and I don't remember her partner's name, but from Ideal Balance,
Yeah.
the financial coaches on.
Yeah.
And we had just had a conversation with our financial advisor. They don't do budget coaching, but like we talked about wanting to get one. And I had been praying about our finances. Well, you had them on. I'm like, well, I like her. I like Juliana. I mean, and these girls sounded cool to me too. So I actually reached out to her, and my husband and I have been budget coaching with them for about 3 months now. And that has been amazing, not only in like in our finances, because that has been truly blessed since we've started, but
Yes.
in our marriage, which has also been something that has been that we have a good marriage, we do, but it's marriage, it's hard, it goes through seasons of its own of closeness and having to fight a little harder, I think, for that closeness. And I do see progress being made. And finances was one of those places that was very volatile for us. It never went well. I mean, conversations really never happened because we would not use nice words and then it would end. And so it was like, I remember my husband was kind of upset about like getting these people, but now he loves it because we're having really good success in our finances. And my thing was, okay, we could have set up these spreadsheets ourselves and done this, sure, but our communication wasn't there. And now, like, we have everyone's on their best behavior when there's a third person in the room because you
Yeah.
can't you can't use your nice words, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
I love it.
So like we had this coach, and like, and what I mean, it kind of seems like, well, how does that have to relate? But it's everything, like having faith, like everything we've been praying for, and then these coaches that come into our lives, and then they help like up level the next thing, and they help like us continue to grow and really grow closer to God, because these are things we keep praying about, and they're happening, and He's putting people in our lives. My last Ironman I did, I I did a half Ironman. I have to make sure I say that because it's not a full, but it went horrible. It went absolutely horrible. I got on the run and it was a nightmare. I finished, but the big thing I learned was that I didn't communicate with my coaches at that time as much as I should have. And
Mhm.
I felt like I did a disservice to God by not embracing the expertise and the knowledge and the gifts that they brought to the table to
Yes.
make me better, thinking that, well, I can just do it. It's okay. You know, but, and so I wanted to make sure I started valuing not just the gifts that God's given me, but the gifts that He's given others and then put in our lives, because I think people want to help people.
Right.
And so I think big part of this journey for me and how I got from there to here is one, like being with God as much as I'd like to say I'm with Him every day, that I dive into something every day, but I'm gonna be honest, I don't. I mean, sometimes life gets crazy and it just doesn't happen, but I always come back and find my way back. And with school being back in, it helps a lot.
Yeah.
Um, but spending time with Him and then, you know, giving Him the things that I need help with, like, please help me, because then he starts putting people, here you go, here you go, here you go, and so he's like, okay, he's showing up, he's giving me these people, he's doing it, all right, it's like he's, setting the rungs for the ladder, and I just kind of keep climbing, like with these people, right, and I just kind of grab onto them and then pull up, and I think, that's just kind of, I'm just kind of paying attention to who he places and where, and
I
trusting him, I
love
guess.
I love that you're saying this because I think that this is a huge breakthrough for people if they choose to see it like you have, right? Like you get to this place where instead of just being independent, self-sufficient, I got it. You know what I mean? Like I'm good. Like people ask you like how you doing? I'm good. Like are you though? Right? So you get to this place where you're like, you know what? I'm not good. There's someone that can actually help me do this. Like literally when you get to this place of humility, humility is a superpower and it opens doors to your answers and these answers that you've been praying for. And often God shows you those answers
Yes.
as people, because what he wants to do is he wants to give you the support that you need, the resources that you need, the skills that you need, the character development that you need, because he wants to show up mightily in and through you. And a lot of
Hmm.
times we just pray for God to change it or to like work out a situation. He's like, yeah, I made you.
Yeah.
Like you're the answer, like help me, like I'm going to help you become a powerful expression of me that's going to do these things, and like
Right.
here's how you're going to learn how to do that, and then you actually become this powerful person in him. But you can't do that without support and without training. So the
Right.
apostle Paul, for example, he often uses athletic references, like he considers himself in training all the time, and he wants to
Hmm.
be found faithful, he wants to be found
Hmm.
trustworthy, reliable, he wants to make
Hmm.
sure that he is a great representation of who God put him on this planet to be, right?
Right.
So it's similar for us if we take that
Hmm.
as a model. God wants to help us. And we, especially if you are in a service based profession, or even if you are a coach, right?
Hmm.
Coaches need coaches, period, right? Because when you think
Hmm.
about the level that you pour out and help people process, like, and you're in the weeds of their life with them, so you're in their mind, you're in their emotions, you're in their spirit, you're in
Hmm.
their just physical reality, you're in their circumstances, like you're helping
Yeah.
everybody process every day depending on what your schedule looks like. Then you're done, and who's helping you process?
Right.
Like don't be deceived, like you need people to help you process for you to be a healthy human, especially based on the level that you're pouring out. So I
Right.
often say you need an entire advisory board, whatever that looks like.
Hmm.
A spiritual mentor, a coach, a therapist, a financial advisor, like whatever it is, you need your entire advisory board. And that's not a luxury, it's a necessity to function at the level that you're called to. Right. And the
Correct.
quicker you
Yes.
get that, the better life gets for you.
Oh, 100%, 100%. I was looking at it the other day, like, okay, who are the coaches that I have this prayer book and I wanted to put all my coaches on my prayer book.
I
And I'm like,
love,
okay,
aw,
who are my coaches that I have in my life right now or have had that,
yes,
because some of them you don't stay with forever or whatever.
yeah,
And I just kind of in my adult life in this period that has gotten me here. And it's just, I'm really, without having like pride, but like I'm glad that I've been able to trust God that I'm going to take on these people. I'm going to take, because I'm going to invest in this way, and not just in me, but in him, that he's like delivering something to me. He's giving me something, and I need to be able to just carry it and run with it and see what he's got inside. And every time I work with somebody, Like it just kind of takes it to that next level. And in different areas, I do try to, pursue
Yeah.
all the areas that I think are important for well balanced health. Because I feel like too, you can grow one area. I kind of think of it like if they were all attached by like like rubber bands. Like if you just keep one area growing only, well, eventually it's not going to be able to grow anymore because all these things down here are pulling it down.
Yep.
So you have to kind of like let everything grow so it can go together. And like finances were always scary. But that was like a big thing for our marriage. I mean, it's helping, all of that stuff. And
Yes.
God's, working in so many good ways. And so I'm like, okay, sometimes when I get ahead of myself, I'm like, all right, I'm ready. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's get the next, let's do it. Let's make it big
Like,
now.
slow down, sister.
I know. I'm still preparing. And I'm like, okay, just remember, Rosie, remember all those prayers you were praying when you were, 10 years old, 30, ish years later, here they are. And so just imagine what might be in 30 more years or 15 or whatever. So just kind of being patient and like, whatever comes next.
Joke, like you ask God for a lot. Do you want it or not?
Yeah, I know.
You know what I
I
mean?
know.
Like
I know.
sometimes it's a slow cook. It takes a minute, right? Like it's not
Right.
like a microwave life. Like things are happening here. So
That's right. Slow. What was it? Well, there's go slow to get fast. That's like a runner, whatever. Was it cooking term, low and slow?
yeah,
So it's like, yes, got it. Remember the slow cook it. Yeah. So
I
it's
want to
good
hear from
though.
you too that the experience of, because this has happened for some people, and we have some of those people too that are, I don't know how we describe them. They don't make themselves known, but they're here. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Right? So it's like they're listening to the podcast, but you will never know they're listening kind of a people, right? And you were that for a minute. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
That's me. Hi,
curious.
I'm here.
Yeah, you're like, hello. Like finally, like you reveal yourself later when you're like comfortable and want to come out of your shell, right? So it's
Yeah. Yeah.
tell me about that experience because I know some people are sitting there today and we do have another round of the mastermind starting on 10/9, right? So I'm curious
Yeah.
what happened for you, like what was going on. So in case you can speak to what's happening in somebody else and they can get it, what was
Mhm.
happening to you when you Googled the podcast and it came up and you started listening? What started happening? And then in between you being like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go for the God's Life Mastermind. No, maybe I'm not. Okay, I think it's time. Like
Yeah.
explain that and then what happened when you actually said yes. Like just give us that journey because I think so many people are there and we can miss out when we don't say yes,
Yeah.
right? Because there's almost, I've
For
said this
sure.
online before, there's an opportunity and there's a timeline for it. And you have to seize the opportunity and the timeline of that opportunity. Like you're graced
Yeah.
for it. But when you
Yeah.
miss it, like you do miss that opportunity, right? You
For
miss
sure.
what literally God has available for you when you shut it down. You have this
Mhm.
prayer, he answers, it pops up. It is not random, but you talk it away, you dismiss it, you turn from it.
Mhm.
Something happens. So I'm curious
Right.
what your experience has been.
Yeah. So I get well. So we started listening to you. So I looked you up for like, well, I looked up fitness, food, faith, related podcasts, and yours came up. And I don't remember what the first one was I listened to, if I'm being honest. But I remember when I listened to it, thinking like, oh yeah, like like this girl, like so much of your story resonates with my story, like the just something happening in your life, like a tipping point and feeling just completely shattered. And I read a book, Lisa, I'm sorry, I'm going to mispronounce her last name, Turkhurst or,
Yep.
all right. I was reading one of her books and she was talking about, when we're broken down and, it made into ashes basically or dust, right? And she was talking about the potter and how the potter molds us and yada yada. Then she told about a story. She met this mom and daughter, and the mom was a big potter and the daughter like knew about it because of that. And they had this conversation about how what a potter will do, like it will break old pieces into dust and then use some of that dust to create a new piece that's even stronger. And I
Yeah.
was like, wow, like this is so cool. And I love the it's like Second Corinthians, I think it's like delight in like my weaknesses and all that. Cause like when I'm weak, then I'm strong.
Yeah.
That's like that was like my go-to verse at the time. But, hold on, now I just lost my train of thought. Sorry. How did I get there? Oh, so I was listening to your podcast and I felt comfortable with you and like, okay, she's coming from a familiar place. I liked the way you delivered your messages and just had fun on the podcast. It wasn't always like, it was just fun, right? Like you can laugh at yourself, and I laugh at myself all the time. My husband will tell you that I'm the funniest person I know because it's true. Like I'm hilarious. Anyway, but like I liked all that stuff. It was comfortable, and I always listen to you while I'm working out, and so it's like something I can listen to and kind of like flow with when my oxygen's pumping, right? I like just hearing it. And then I joined Courage Co. Initially, and then I was so intrigued by the God's vibes. And I think initially when I signed up, it was kind of one of those, one, I wanted to be financially responsible, and two, but I also want to be like, okay, God will provide. And also, I struggle with that kind of stuff. Like, okay, I know you're going to provide, but just to be safe.
Yeah.
So I just, and at the time too, I think some of my other coaching was going on, and I didn't want to overload my plate. I wanted to make sure that, okay, if I'm going to sign up for it, I want to do it, and I want to be like present in what's being asked of us. And I was kind of looking for something faith-based. So I had started with a fitness professional masterclass thing. Then I got a nutrition certification. So kind of there was my fitness, there was my food. And I'm like, okay, where's like a faith growth piece? Like I do Bible studies and different things, but this, when I would read about it or you would talk about it, or I would look at like kind of things going on, it's like, this seems like such a great opportunity to grow spiritually. Actually, and selfishly, God, thank you for the correction. I wanted my business to grow, and I thought, well, maybe if I join this will help my business grow.
Yeah.
But it's helped me grow, which is so much better.
Which will help your business grow.
Which will help my business grow. Or I do something else. I don't know. But like, yeah, it's helping in so many ways that like, I guess I didn't even, really see coming. You had us do one exercise that helped me with a piece of trauma in my life that has been haunting me for a very long time. And to be able to, I mean, honestly, the whole class is worth it to be able to have let that go, and to see it from God's point of view and to embrace it, and to be, proud to have been called to go through it, I guess. So, all of those things. And then when I finally decided to do it, I'm like, I applied, and then I'm like, no. And had gotten an email from your team, saying like, hey, what happened? Like, where'd you go?
Hello,
and I was like, no. And then I said, I'll do it in the next one. And then as that next one came up, I thought, well, one, I said I would, and, I want to, and I felt like that was one of those things, God's kind of nudging, and I'm like, well, but hold on, wait, what if we did it this way instead of just jumping in? So, but I think the timing has been really good for when it all worked out. So and
good.
it's felt really good. I mean, I don't get to listen to stuff every day. Again, life kind of, everybody's busy. I know. I think as you have children and more people more people's lives that you have to manage, enter your life, it does become a little bit more of navigating more pieces. And so sometimes I don't always get to it, but again, I feel like I don't sweat it. I don't like get pressured about it, because I feel like God's delivering everything I need to hear when I need to hear it. And some of the stuff, I like to sit on it for a few days. I take time on the lessons. I write it out. I think it out. I did the 30-day devotional. It took me longer than 30 days, but I loved that devotional. I'm so sad that I'm at the end, but on the last page, there's stuff to do. And I'm like, this is my science mind. I'm like going through every single one and documenting all the scriptures, everything I asked for, and every revelation. And I'm just because I want to see the patterns. I want to get my spreadsheet out.
I love it.
But it's just been, so I like taking my time with it. And I feel like I can do that in that space. There's not like, when we check in, it's not like, okay, everybody turn to this page in the book.
Right.
And
Do
that's
your
where we're
homework.
working.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's been really comfortable for me.
That's so good. What would you say to somebody that's considering it now that you're like in it and diving in and digesting?
I mean, I guess it's like, I mean, what do you have to lose? I mean, there's really, it's just, I think for even for somebody who's on the fence about God, I mean, maybe, just see what I mean, it, I can't see it ever going in a bad way. Even if you're on the fence about God, like, you do this and just check him out in all his splendor and glory. I mean, yeah,
Love,
that's, do it. Just do it.
love. And how
I
has
know.
that changed you and like where you're at now and what you're springing and leaping into?
I feel like I have gotten better at recognizing God's move, like the Holy Spirit guidance in my life. We've had situations and encounters where I feel like I've been really connected in that way. I feel like, eh, you know, God might, I don't know if God's directing me in new directions or what, but I feel more comfortable than I've ever been. When we started talking, I said, I feel almost arrogant when I say, I'm just, everything's good. I kind of have reached this place where I know not everything's good all the time, but it's a very comfortable place. I feel like I'm very comfortable.
Yeah.
That
Well,
makes
it's
sense.
almost like a contentment or a peace is what I'm getting, right? And you didn't come in that way. And this has happened very
No.
quickly for the record,
Yeah.
right? This is not like
Yeah.
a long process like this. It's almost like, and I've known this to be true, when you give God your yes, like he goes to work. Like when you get
Yeah.
serious, like gets really serious
Yeah.
about whatever you're walking through. And what a gift to even look back at like what you were just describing a few minutes ago to like what you're living in now. Like that didn't even look like it was possible.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I think about that perspective, God's perspective, and seeing life kind of through the lens of Christ and through the lens of God, like what he's doing. And like,
Yeah.
I know I can't fully understand and fully see his picture, but I've learned to look back on my life with that because,
Yeah.
there were things that were a part of my life that could have made not choosing the lens of God really easy. But so I've learned to look back on my life through that lens, which has made it easier for me to turn and look forward through my life in that lens. And one of the biggest changes I see for me too is just how I'm bringing so many conversations back to God, and how God, and like in my own daily life with the people I know. And I love that. I love just talking about God and everything he's doing and how he's working in all these different scenarios. And
Are you open to sharing that one
yeah.
example of how you led the fitness folks? Like you learned something and then you shared it with them immediately. Do you
With
remember
the who?
the fitness folks? You were teaching like a fitness class and you like walked them through a faith exercise. Do you remember this?
Oh gosh, I want no, can you remind me?
So
Do you
you
remember?
were, I think you did one of the trainings in the mastermind. I think it was on goal setting. And
Oh,
you're
the
like, you
goal.
know what? Like, I'm going to bring it to this class of students that I'm teaching, even though
Oh,
it's not faith based at all. And we're going to do this thing.
yes, yes, yes. So we did, it was the 22 like impossible goals,
Yes.
and like setting these goals. And I had in where I teach, I do these lives, and we had been talking about goal setting, and I
Yeah.
thought, okay, I mean, kind of went against the whole be realistic thing, but whatever, right? It's
Right.
okay. It's okay. It's okay. You do it this way, but this is the exception. Um, and so I thought, I'm gonna throw this out there and see what happens. So
Yeah.
I kind of told them the concept. Okay, you're setting these 22 impossible, that would be impossible goals for like a year. Like in a year, impossible to achieve these goals.
Yeah.
And one of my goals was just coming up with a list that long, which like,
Yeah.
because then I had one immediately checked off. Yay, good for me when I came up with them. But I told them, the concept. I'm like, so I'm going to put one of mine up on the board. I said, this is kind of an exercise in faith. And what do you have in faith? And I'm going to put mine up on the board. And if anybody would like to share, please throw yours up on the board and we'll see what happens, right? And this is supposed to, and by the end of the day, like 7 people had written goals up on the board, and it was full of all these goals, and it was really cool. I think when you do stuff like that, it can be planting seeds.
Sure.
Because for some of the people, like I want to check in on them because I'm going back into the gym this weekend, and I teach there sporadically, and just to kind of check in and be like, well, so what's going on with that? Like, and if that goal comes to fruition for them, because some of them were taking pictures of it and everything, imagine what that might do
Yeah.
for the kingdom and their relationship with God. I'll tell you one other story if that's okay. So again, I'm trying to behave in a way that's more like God, even out in public, to talk about him openly, which can be hard and intimidating, and I don't always nail it, but it's a pursuit of mine. And my husband and I went to one of his work parties, and we were playing a game, and it wasn't at work, but with work friends. We were playing a game, and you had to read these cards, and on these cards, and one of my goals for this year is to stop using, bad words. And I have, and as I grow closer to God, it becomes easier and easier. Again, I mean, not batting 1,000, but we're at least Hall of Fame level.
Yeah.
So but we were at this game, and it had words on it that I didn't want to say. And I said, as I read the card, I'm like, okay, and I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, I'm going to do it. Okay, this card has words on it that I don't want to say. So I'll just say the letter.
I love it.
It gets better. It gets better. I'm reading these cards and like just saying the letter, only saying the letter of the bad word. And then, everybody, and then this one girl says, oh, we work with high school, we hear these words all the time. It's okay if you say it. And I said, well, I don't want to say it.
Yeah.
And I said, well, it's not that. I said, I don't want to say it.
Yeah.
I said, but, I had no expectation of anybody else. It was like a personal thing. Like, even in this setting, I can be who God wants me to be and not have to feel intimidated by it. So the game goes on. And as we go, and as the cards are going around and people are reading, I like start to notice everybody else is saying the letter. Nobody else is saying the words. And I'm like, that's insane. Like the impact that you can make. And I didn't ask them to. I didn't it was a personal thing, right? But like, I think when you and I think a lot of it too is sometimes there are other people in the room that feel the same way, but it can be intimidating to step up and say so. And so to be that person who then gives permission to everybody else who feels the same way to feel safe, that they don't have to either. Yeah, it's just kind of.
And these are to some folks, right? This might be like, meh, cool, you shared your faith, right? But like when you've lived your whole life not doing that, or when you haven't felt comfortable with your relationship with God, to let that be like one of the most fascinating things about you, right? Like these are the big things, right? That lead to bigger things. It's always the small seeds that lead to the biggest breakthroughs. And I'm thinking of 2 scriptures. One of them is about not allowing yourself to be a hindrance to somebody else and the cause of their stumbling, right? In any way, in thought, in word, and action. So if in any way you feel like that could lead somebody to stumble, it gives you that desire to not be that way, to aspire to be a model of what's possible and just show them the way, but not tell them what to do. And that's a very different thing. And then the other one, it's about how our call is to freedom. But don't use your freedom as an opportunity to sin, but through love, serve and support one another. Right. And I just love that, because that's exactly what you were doing, right? You were living the word in these situations. And it was just beautiful to see how that rippled out. And it still is like, one act of maybe feeling awkward or uncomfortable, right? And using your free will to be solid in what you know and what you're committed to change people around you.
Yeah.
Huge lesson. Huge.
Yeah. It was really, and then like just when I noticed it, I was like, wow, it was just kind of cool. Like Yeah, I'm like, so, da, 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 F, and then just like reading, like,
There's an F
you just,
word here, and
yeah, you know what
we're
that means.
not gonna say it.
I know, it was a cool moment, I think.
It is a cool moment.
Yeah, I think, and that's been one of the, you talked about love, and that's one of the big things. My husband calls me an upstander. He's like, there's bystanders and there's upstanders. And I wouldn't say that he's wrong, because there are definitely instances I can look back my whole life and see, um, that's kind of who at my core, that I am kind of that person. I'm the person that will speak up when maybe others might not, or I'm the person that's going to just stand up for, and sometimes I think, in my past, I have learned that, because what the world says or whatever, that paints a picture of me in some kind of negative way.
Yeah.
But I still think that's a big part of who I am. And so in my relationship with God, and I'm sure in my life I've been more aggressive in those attempts, in other, and perhaps not, I think always with, at my core, with the intent of good and the intent of living rightly.
Yeah.
But perhaps my delivery wasn't always on point with that. But
Yeah.
I think part of like growing closer to God, I find myself leaning on him a lot, and like wanting to show up like he might in those situations, still being that upstander, but doing it in a more righteous and godly way than Rosie's way. Right. It just can not always be that way, but getting there.
Yeah.
Although now it is that way, because God, is going to make it so, because that's not me anymore. The
Yeah.
new me.
Yeah. So good. What do you sense that God is leading you into in this season?
That's a great question, because sometimes I feel like a change is a coming. And um and I'm excited, but maybe not. I mean, we might still be preparing. I've always felt like I've always felt like I have something to share. I'm not sure when God's going to post me in position to do so. And I might come out of nowhere, and probably will, because that's how he likes to play. Wasn't my friend's dad, who's the pastor. I still talk to him occasionally. He married my husband and I, and he, I talk to him, like if I have questions, biblical questions, I go to him a lot. And he always says that, our God's a playful God. Like, he sure is. So I'm not, I feel like something's coming, and I need to make sure I'm just keep preparing, and not get overexcited and like jump the gun. But I feel like I don't feel like I'm the same person I was in, in 2020 and 2021, or even 2022. I feel like a lot of growth has happened in that time. And I feel like, not that I will stop growing, right? I think we kind of go through all of those phases with different seasons, but I feel like something's going to bust open. So we'll see what that is.
Love. Yeah. Be found ready. Be found trustworthy. Like
Yeah, we'll see.
whatever he says. Yeah. No matter the assignment.
Yeah. And also me, and I have to remember too, and my big role is for me, is being a mom and being present and available for my children, which is something that I've always wanted to be able to do.
Yeah.
So that's one of the boundaries that I have. And I don't think that you never know, but I don't think God will present something that rearranges those boundaries, because
Yeah.
I believe that that's really, like, as we set this foundation of faith in our home, being here to cultivate that with my kiddos is like my number one thing.
Yeah. They'll be in it with you. Whatever.
Yeah. So I hope whatever. And then when I pray about that, I kind of talk about, I would really like to see us maintain that intact, if that's your will, which I would hope so. But yeah. we'll see what comes next, but whatever he says, I guess that's what we will do.
Yeah. Well, I am hearing something with families, strangely enough, right? And healed families will save the world, truly. So I'm believing that this beautiful home that you've been able to create, even if you didn't come from one, that's truly where you're going to have a strong, strong ministry for sure.
Yeah, I really hope so. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's just I love seeing my kids. My son built a church out of his Jenga pieces the other day, and you know, she's 10 going on 13,
Yep.
and she's, you know, I think she truly appreciates God. You know, we do have sincere moments, but you know, sometimes at the breakfast table when I bought the Purpose Driven Life devotional for kids. And so every day we're doing a devotional and she'll sit there, God, God, you know, it's just like, but I know it's sinking in, and I know that it's, when she looks back, it will be a big part of her life. But I love seeing them, like after church on Sundays, we talk about the stories. I love that they know Bible stories. I never knew Bible stories as kids.
Yeah.
I love that they are memorizing scripture. You know, I never did that. And I love that, you know, they know books of the Bible, and it makes me happy. So that's a good mission to be on, I think.
Yeah. 100%. And we
Yeah.
got to hear it from you. So folks get this question. You knew it was coming.
Oh gosh, I
Right?
know.
Like many, many years from now, when your mission here on earth is finished and you have another one, you're not able to take any, like you can't leave any of what you've built or established here, but you can leave a piece of advice that would change people's lives, the course of their life and their destiny. And what would you tell them?
So I heard this question on your podcast a lot, and so I was thinking about it today. I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna say? Because there's so many things, right? And so I thought, how could I, frame this in a way that I could come up with something that I really, that would be the thing. So I thought, what would I want someone to tell little Rosie?
Yeah.
Someone to tell 14-year-old Rosie,
Yeah.
21-year-old Rosie. And if I could go back, what would I tell her? And I think it would be to something to this effect. It would be to, you know, to stay with God. You are not forgotten, and your time is coming. And I think that's the biggest, you know, just stay with him. Your time is coming, because his promises never, you know, fail or run out. I mean, it's coming.
Yeah. Love
I
that.
think that would be what I would want to hear, because
Amen. And I think this is making me think back to even what you said in the beginning. I think some people for sure, like I know I'm adopted in the natural, and some folks that didn't have present parents, right? They can really wrestle with that question, who am I? Like, I think it's significant that your young self is looking in the mirror being like, who am I? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you find yourself in that place, God wants to answer all of those questions with you. And I don't believe that you can answer that question until you know him, until you meet
For sure.
him, he unpacks
Yeah.
that with you. And so I would even say that's in the mastermind, right? That is something that you learn a lot about your identity. You learn about the anointing, you operating in the power of God in your life, how he wants to uniquely express himself through you, how he wants to multiply your influence, because it's not even that your time is coming, like your time is now, right? Like
right.
you don't really have that promise of tomorrow. And I think I used to wrestle with
Sure.
so I love that you brought up the purpose driven life, right? That I got to this place where I'm like, okay, instead of seeking for this thing and trying to figure that out, like I'm either going to take Jeremiah at the word that God said here, that God has a good plan planned in advance that I might walk in it. I'm either going to take that seriously or I'm not. And the only way I do it is waking up knowing that if I'm here, I'm on purpose. My purpose is to live like it right where I am. And then if I do that a day at a time, a step at a time, a moment at a time, God will walk me into these good plans every single day, but I'll never question if I was on purpose if I'm showing up like it. So for whoever that's for, I think sometimes, not that you're doing this, but I think I can feel it for somebody listening. Sometimes we we are waiting for a future or a set time, but we're in it now. Like you're in
Right.
it now, you're not waiting on it, you're in it. And so the way that it's because it's one of those things where you will wake up one day and you'll be in it in a bigger way. But it's
Right.
only because you've been in it this entire time and you were just getting faithful. God was developing your character. He was renewing your mind. He was giving you a right heart, a heart like
Hmm.
his. He was giving you this perspective where things never have you and you cling to
Hmm.
him, right? Like there's so
Yeah.
much happening, but it's happening now. So I just want to
Yeah.
enforce that for somebody that's listening because that's so good.
Yeah. It is. And well, and like I said, it's coming, like, I think, that was kind of thinking back to that, my younger self,
Yes.
who just
Yeah.
wasn't sure.
Yeah.
Maybe, like you said, for those people that are listening that might be on the fence
Yeah.
about this thing called faith. And
Yeah.
it is possible, and it's there, and it's waiting for us. And it feels really good. And sometimes I I see myself from the outside. I'm like, who am I? Like I hear myself talk. I'm like, this is crazy. Like,
Like I'm such a new creation right now.
I mean, it's for real. Like, I feel like I feel like I the feeling that when I would see these women, and they were always like women, right, who seemed strong in faith and strong in how they carry themselves and strong in their confidence that came from God, not an earthly confidence or a worldly confidence, right? But like a confidence from God. These women that I would see and just would aspire to,
Yeah.
that feeling I would get when I would see them, like I feel it from inside now and not from outside. I mean, I see women, I appreciate those women like you and
Yeah.
other people that I coach with in my Bible study girlfriends, like, and I'm so grateful to have all of these women in my life. But I feel like, I know it's a journey, but it's like I've arrived. Like, I find like I can, and so when things knock me off, I feel like I'm so much better at finding my way back, as opposed to feeling as lost as I felt, but always seeking it. Like, I feel like I've been seeking God since I can remember. But for a long time, I don't think I even knew it because I wasn't really sure who God was. Or, yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God. You said so much just there that I'm only going to compliment it, but like, I feel like for you to hear it too is so, so powerful. So I feel like for you, you're in an ownership season, right? Where the things that you once thought were outside of you are actually in you and you're owning them. So I feel like that's a big difference. Like that desire, that desperation for those things versus owning and living from them night and day. Like you are literally
Oh
are
yeah.
human in that way. And I think to the point on faith, like I wasn't somebody that came from legacy of faith or was raised in that, incubated in that, none of that, right? So I was definitely a fear walker, not a faith walker, right?
Right.
Definitely use faith walking over here as a thing because that is the way, literally. I think
Yes.
you're definitely in a time now where we can't go by what we think, we can't go by what we see, we can't go by what we feel, we can't go by what people are saying. We literally have to navigate by faith, and that can be really intimidating when you've never seen it or actually experienced it or walked in it, right? So I think
Mhm.
if anything, my encouragement would be to put yourself in spaces and places and work with people that embody great faith because it's contagious and you'll start developing your own and you
Mhm.
won't even know. You'll kind of go from like hoping for it to walking in it, right? Like that literally will start
Yeah.
happening. Like I think you are living in great faith now. Like I just want to
Yeah.
honor you because there's been so
Oh, thank
many
you.
things that you have wrestled through and fought through that nobody knew, yet you still showed up and loved people so well through that. And you didn't stop. Like you kept like warrioring through all of these things. And it's not your own strength anymore. You have God's strength, right? You have, I call it Godfidence, right? You have this confidence now that's not just in yourself, but it's in what God is doing in and through you. And that's a very different thing. And there is
Yes.
now this freedom and this joy, like this less seriousness aspect of things. It's almost like God is restoring your youthfulness. He's redeeming the time in that way, this way that you had to grow up so fast. He's like, and now we play. And now this can
Yeah.
be fun. And now this can be easy. And you can still be wildly successful when you trust me in that. Right? This
Yes.
childlike wonder. So I just believe so strongly that God is in a season of blowing your mind in the best
Yes.
ways, right? Where you just get to
Yeah.
receive it, but you don't have to strive for it. And it's
Yeah.
just so beautiful to see how you're modeling the way and allowing people and inviting them to be a part of what you are learning. It's so beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And thank you for everything that you do. I mean, it can be, it's a big act of courage to step into or to step out into the world publicly and to really guide people. And, I think it's great that you put the gifts God gave you and you give them to others. So thank you for that. I appreciate you.
You're welcome. Right back at you. How can people connect with you?
Okay. I'm on Instagram and Facebook, Fit Livin, FITTLIVIN. And from my Instagram profile, you can find my website and my email, things like that. But that's probably the most accessible place to find me. Or if you're in Detroit, Michigan, let me know, and you can find me out here too.
Yeah. Or if you're in Courage Co, you can come hang with us.
Yeah, come hang with us in Courage Co. You can find me there too. Yep,
Yeah.
all those spots.
I love it. Well, thank you for being so
Yeah.
generous with your story and your journey. It's
Oh,
been such a gift to have you here. So I really appreciate you.
thank you so much.
Yes.
Yeah.